Good morning and welcome to the fifth meeting of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senator Cruz Crawford.
Present.
Senator Ellison. Senator Pizzina.
Present.
Assembly Member Considine.
Present.
Assembly Member DeLong.
Present.
Assembly Member Gurr.
Here.
Assembly Member Jackson.
Here.
And Chair Anderson.
And I am present. Oh my gosh, how great is that all of us are here today. No substitutes. So before we begin, a few housekeeping announcements. If everyone would please remember to silence your cell phones. The agenda for today is posted. Please note that agenda items may be taken out of order, combined, or postponed. Members of the public, if you would like to receive email notifications when meeting materials are posted on the committee's webpage, you can sign up for that on the Nevada Legislature's website. You might see some of us using our laptops to follow the presentations. Please do not take that as a sign of disrespect. And finally, as I've announced at the past 2 meetings, this is now the final call for bill draft request recommendations. The deadline is next week, July 1st at 1 p.m. You can find further information about how to submit recommendations on the committee's webpage. With that, we'll actually move on to our first period of public comment. During the interim, we have 2 opportunities for public comment, once at the beginning of the meeting and once at the end. Members of the public can provide testimony in person, over the phone, by email, or by snail mail. Instructions are provided on the agenda. If you are testifying in person, please remember to sign in at the table by the door, and please remember to clearly state and spell your name before you begin, and please limit your comment to 2 minutes. Staff will time each speaker during public comment to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity to speak. If you wish to provide public comment over the phone, the number is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID for today is 829-3742-4742, and then you press the pound key. Press the pound key again if asked for a participation ID. We'll start first here in Carson. If anyone would like to give public comment, please come to the table now. Seeing no mad rush to the table, if there's anyone wishing to provide public comment in Las Vegas, please come to the table at this time. Again, seeing no mad dash. Hopefully people are watching soccer, I guess, today. Let's go to the phones. AVH, do we have anyone who wishes to make public comment?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Seeing no public comment, let's call up our first speakers. We have Vincent Guthrow, our new Director of DCNR, and Joe Cassiopo. Sheesh, I'm an English teacher who cannot figure out Po. Okay, our new state engineers joining us. Congratulations on the new appointments. Condolences sometimes too, I bet. But congratulations, truly. I'm pleased, because we work so regularly with your department and with both DCNR and DWR, I thought it would make sense for us just to have a quick opportunity to meet you in the official capacity. I believe some of us know you away from this capacity as well. But welcome to the Interim Committee on Natural Resources. This is not a job interview. We are not asking what your qualifications are and why did you get an A- in whatever class it was. But instead, it's more to hear from you and the opportunities that we have to work with you. Please introduce yourself for the record whenever you are ready. And we really do appreciate this opportunity.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation today. As mentioned, my name is Vincent Guthrow. I serve as the Director for the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. To my left is Joe Cassiopo, who's our state engineer, and he'll introduce himself and speak a little bit later. For the record, it's Vinson. My last name is Guthrow. It's Guthreau. Again, thank you, Chair. Thank you to the committee for the invitation, the opportunity to touch a little bit on my new perspective from the director's office at the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I know it's not a job interview, but I thought I would just talk a little bit. As the chair mentioned, some of you may know me in my prior role. I served in local government at the Nevada Association of Counties for about a decade, 5 years as the deputy director, and then the executive director after that. I was raised here in Nevada, and I actually do have prior experience at the department in our Division of Environmental Protection. I did serve as their public information officer for a number of years prior to taking service at NACO. Chair, if it's okay, I thought I would just run through some things and then turn it over to our state engineer, and then we'll go from there if that works. Great, thank you so much. So just some top-of-line information and stats for the department level. The Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, pretty multifaceted agency. We have 8 divisions, we have 4 standalone programs, and we have 15 statutory boards and commissions that are spread across about 59 duty stations across the state. And they're working on our mission to conserve, protect, manage, and enhance Nevada's natural, cultural, and recreational resources. So just some of the larger divisions that you may have heard of: environmental protection, our Division of Environmental Protection, and then our Division of Forestry. Also, that's pretty hot at the moment. Pardon the pun. They do a lot of wildfire suppression, obviously, and they do those pre-mitigation work as well, which we'll touch on a little bit. We also have the newly formed, I guess it's starting to not become so new, but in 2019, the Division of Outdoor Recreation, our state lands, and also our state parks, and then of course our Division of Water Resources. Our 4 standalone programs, we have conservation districts, we have the Conserve Nevada program, our Off-Highway Vehicles program, which is housed under the Division of Outdoor Recreation, and also our Sagebrush Ecosystem Council, program. So a little bit about our structure. We're pretty light at the top. There's myself, and then we have 2 deputy directors. But we essentially manage the department's core support functions. Those include your fiscal, also your administrative and human resource services, and communications and policy. All operate out of the director's office, and we provide that coordinated support across the department. We serve about a little over 1,000 full-time and seasonal employees, so it's a pretty large department by state standards. We have 862 full-time employees and about 199 seasonals. 133 of those exist in our state parks, seasonal operations, and 65 are in forestry. As you know, and as the reason why we're here, there's been a handful of administrative and leadership changes, including myself. So we have some new faces in these leadership roles. So recent retirements and transitions in our division leadership created opportunities for advancements, mostly internally. Ryan Shane has now been promoted to our state forester and fire warden at the Division of Forestry. I think some of you had the opportunity to get to know him. He replaces Casey, which was the prior state forester and fire warden. Jonathan Brunes is now serving as administrator of our state parks. Bob Mergel served in state parks for 31 years. He's quite a story to tell. He served as a seasonal initially, and he just retired literally a week ago. So I think he's ready for the new chapter, but of course we're sorry to see him go, and Bob did a great job for us. And again, our state engineer, who's to my left, and you'll be hearing from him, so I don't need to go into his work. I don't want to steal his thunder for you. So some initial director level impressions of the department for myself. I implemented what I would call a 60-day, sort of 30, 60, and 100-day outreach strategy to the administrators of the individual divisions and our program leadership. I wanted to get to know the divisions from those individuals who lead those divisions, and really had conversations with them around sort of what's working, that's not working, things that they would like to see in the department, and specifically in their division, and just get a full picture and understanding of sort of where they're at with their divisions and their forward-thinking viewpoint. I've also started talking with our administrators around what I would call a culture of engagement. I think we can do some work at the department, both with the regulated community and with the other external stakeholders. And it begins with an understanding from every single employee that we're public servants, and that's what we're here to do. We're not gonna, one of the things I've said in some of our larger meetings is that we're not going to hide behind technology. We're going to leverage technology to communicate with the public and other stakeholders that are interested in what the department is doing. Now, we have some very, very smart people, and their skill sets don't always lend to that. We got engineers and biologists and hydrologists, but we're working on it at the department level. Ultimately, I believe in what I've conveyed to department leadership is that building relationships and improving customer service to the regulated community, the legislature, and others, and being efficient and expedient in our communication actually helps our workload and actually makes our jobs easier. So we'll continue to work on that process. It won't happen overnight, but we are committed to it. So as I mentioned, had an opportunity to meet with some of the division leadership. I do want to touch on some of the challenges and opportunities as I see them at the director level. We do have some workforce and internal capacity issues, mostly because, and this will be a theme throughout some of my remarks today, a lot of our positions are highly skilled positions. They're niche positions. They're hydrologists. They're engineers, and I think those positions require a passion and you have to really be interested in that. And I think we have some challenges around that workforce. For us, I don't think our vacancy rates are completely out of line with other state agencies, but we always have work to do on filling vacancies and keeping staff fully abreast. It lessens the stress level, I think, on existing staff and helps us serve the public more efficiently. We also face continued environmental and public safety risks as Nevada faces increasing threats from catastrophic wildfire, invasive species, increased drought, and other hazards. These risks highlight the need for more proactive planning, shared stewardship, and innovation on our end, and they create opportunities for us to expand interagency coordination, to share resources, and to set collaborative priorities to strengthen our resilience statewide. Again, I touched on public engagement and transparency. I think when you have a lack of transparency, and I'm not saying that existed before, I just think there's ways that we can do it better. And it creates a little bit of frustration, I think, for folks if they don't know sort of where we're at in the process. I don't think people mind getting a decision made even if it doesn't agree with them. They just want to know along the way sort of how they can improve that process. And we're happy to be partners with the public on that process. Also, Nevada faces rapid population growth. We also have some of the most emerging industries in the world in this state. We're blessed to have the opportunity to serve them, but they do create challenges for us around understanding their processes as they try to understand ours as well. We also have shifting economic conditions. We have aging infrastructure and an increased demand on state services. It also intensifies pressures on our natural resources and our systems at the department. These external pressures and opportunity, they just underscore the urgency to build long-term resilience and to act strategically at the department and really to strengthen our statewide coordination, which we'll continue to do at the department level. I talked a little bit about hard-to-fill positions, so I won't touch too much on those. Some public engagement opportunities that we're exploring at the department include, statewide trade associations, increased private sector and regulated community engagement. And under my leadership, the way that I've sort of tasked this is that we don't operate in a vacuum here at the department. So those are our challenges and opportunities. I thought I would touch a little bit on our successes. I'm going to take responsibility for them, even though a lot of them happened before I got here. I was appointed at the end of March. But some of these, it speaks to the great work that the 1,000 employees do at the department, across the department. We did our most ever pre-treatment of acres through the Division of Forestry and coordination through our federal, tribal, and local partners. This helps with pre-disaster mitigation. These treatments include hand thinning, prescribed burn, and mechanical work, along with targeted grazing. And Nevada's land and wildfire management agencies have treated more acres than have burned 4 out of the last 5 years. We have a shared stewardship program, which is really it's really robust. It started since 2021 alone. We've completed more than 1,400 cross-jurisdictional and landscape scale projects, treated about 538,000 acres, so a little over 500,000, and just 344,000 of those in the last 2 years. This foundation built through this collaboration has also helped secure over $100 million in U.S. Forest Service funding to implement landscape scale wildfire mitigation across about 3.5 million acres in our Sierra Front and Elko Front. These priorities span 30 urban and rural communities with more than 600,000 residents, and they include our federal, state, local, tribal, and private lands. Just want to touch a little bit on some other successes. I already mentioned Bob Margell's retirement. State Parks delivered a transformative $30 million visitor center in the Valley of Fire. State Park completed in just over 3 years through a very powerful public-private partnership, and it's supported by general fund resources, also supported through our Conserve Nevada program, and then a major $7 million grant from the Helmsley Charitable Trust that helped fund that. It enhances education and elevates our visitors' experience there at the Valley of Fire State Park. Our Division of Environmental Protection executed 5 major infrastructure funding agreements with the American Flats Wastewater Project. This will convert treated domestic wastewater from the city of Reno into potable supplied water for the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. NDEP's $134 million contribution supports a total project investment of about $471 million. This is about long-term water sustainability up here in the north. In late 2025, NDEP achieved a major statewide milestone with the successful completion of lead testing programs in our public schools, public charter schools, and licensed child care facilities. Ultimately, this helps protect the safety and welfare of our youth and our children. This was supported by federal EPA funding, and it guided through a framework of training, testing, and taking action. So we appreciate the efforts of that work in for our youth. Talk a little bit about, I just have 2 more things to touch on, Chair. I want to talk about leveraging some of our community dollars. We have about 37 grant programs, but I'll touch on some. The Nevada Lake Tahoe license plate program is investing more than $1.2 million in preservation and restoration projects across the Tahoe Basin, thanks to the more than 36,000 Nevadans who proudly display the Tahoe plate. These plates have generated over $14 million and funded nearly 200 projects that help protect Lake Tahoe's clarity as we meet some of those environmental benchmarks. The Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation has awarded 22 projects, a total of $283,000 through the 2026 Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant Program. These projects support opportunities like outdoor camps for children and families in foster care, ski and snowboard lessons for urban youth, and equipment for school-based outdoor programs. Created by the legislature in 2019 and it was first funded in 2023, the grant program continues to expand opportunities for Nevada's youth to learn, explore, and connect with the outdoors. The governor and myself and the legislature, I think we all share the vision of getting kids outside, and we'll work diligently to leverage these programs and continue that great work. We believe the benefits of school-aged youth are endless with improved mental health, physical activity, and connection to the outdoors. Also, through our Conserve Nevada program, we recently made a historic $42 million investment in conservation and outdoor recreation projects throughout the state. Just want to touch a little bit on those, including $29.5 million invested in new projects statewide. That includes $19 million that'll fund a new hands-on science center and immersive Colorado River experience at the Springs Preserve in southern Nevada, providing thousands of Clark County students with an engaging way to explore Nevada's natural resources. We'll also do a ton of major trail improvements, leveraging $3 million that'll include the Vegas Valley Rim Trail, the Wetlands Loop Trail, and the Lake Tahoe East Shore Trail, benefiting residents and tourists and leveraging those outdoor recreation dollars to bring in tourism. Also, there's about $7.5 million of supported.
Director,
Yeah.
you might want to start wrapping it up.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I will do that. Apologize for that. I just want to touch a little bit on our off-highway vehicles program, which works on infrastructure projects for trails and leverages local trails plans. And with that, Chair, I'll turn it over to our state engineer. Thank you for the time, and apologize. There's so much across the department. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, and I'm sure that we will have some further follow-up questions where maybe you can expand upon some of those items. Thank you, sir. You're on.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and Commission members. My name is Joe Cassiopo. I am the state engineer for the Division of Water Resources. I was appointed March 30th of this year, so still getting my feet wet, but enjoying the folks I'm working with and what we're trying to do. I was born in New York, but I've been a Nevada resident for 30 plus years, raised my 3 children here with my wife. They all went through the Carson School District. Quick background about me personally, veteran of the U.S. Army, served 4 years active duty, 4 years reserved. I was a principal at a local engineering, environmental, and water rights firm. Was there for about almost 28 years. Was a member of the Northern Nevada Development Authority, trustee and president for the local Carson City School District, where I served 12 years, commissioner for Parks and Rec Commission here in Carson City, president of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and for a very short term, director for the Carson City Chamber of Commerce on the board of directors. So like immersing myself into the community and the state, and that's kind of why I'm here. My background is generally infrastructure planning, entitlements, permitting, design, dam safety, water rights and water resources, and hydrology. When I joined the division, kind of my goal initially was kind of do a listening and learning tour. Just understand what folks are dealing with inside, talking with the various groups and stakeholders outside the office, and just get a flavor of where we're at. And really, I don't think it's anything groundbreaking, but the goals I've set are just ongoing communication, transparency, and efficiency. I think if we can do those three things, like the director said, whether people are getting the answer they necessarily want, they're getting it in a timely manner, we're understanding what they need, they're understanding what we need, and trying to work with folks to make sure that understanding is clear. The mission of our division is to, simply put, protecting Nevada's limited water resource by employing best available science to guide responsible water management decisions, ensuring the protection of the state's most precious resource, and this is for the benefit of all Nevadans. And that's really what we're looking at, is how do we serve the public? That's kind of our task, and I take that seriously. DWR, our sections of responsibilities, we have, of course, a water rights section where we're involved in permitting, hydrology, adjudications and appropriations, title work, and hearings. Well drilling, where we mostly deal with licensing and enforcement. We have 67,000 production wells and 50,000 domestic wells that come across our office as folks, have requests and whatnot that we look at. We have water resources and drought resiliency, looking at, of course, flood and drought planning. In that, and I'll touch on it briefly, we're involved in the Nevada Water Initiative. And then dam safety, where we're looking at new construction, we're conducting inspections, and we're reviewing emergency action plans, to make sure our water impoundments are safe, again, for the public. And again, trying to respect your time, I just have a couple things I wanted to hit on. But our key areas of focus right now, and again, centered around public service, we're looking at digitization and modernization. And for some reason, those do not roll off my tongue comfortably. But staffing, recruitment, and retention, also internally setting priorities, serving the citizens in Nevada, again, through efficiency, communication, and transparency. I'll touch on these things a little bit more. Digitization, we have 6 staff in Carson City, 1 in Las Vegas, and 1 in Elko, scanning a variety of documents and maps. In total, we're looking at scanning over 122,000 permits and over 145,000 maps. So it's quite an endeavor. Funding for it goes through the end of the year, and we're tracking pretty well. When you start doing things like this, other scans and needs come up, and so we're looking at maybe if we expand this to wrap up whatever we might not get finished and include some of the additional work that we've uncovered along the way. Modernization, again, just trying to serve the public better, but we're looking at one of our big things as a permit data tracker. So when folks have permits that come into the office for water rights, initially we have it set up so we can track it. We know where in the process it is, and you don't have to chase folks around the office figuring out where it's at. But as it gets, a little more robust and we're comfortable with it, the idea is to release it to the public so anybody can go on and they can track where their permit is in the process. So I think that'll be real helpful for folks. We're also looking at our extension of time. The forms we have, we've been told they're a little cumbersome. They might say the same thing in a couple different ways. So we're looking at ways to streamline that and just simplify those forms that we get the information we need to do a thorough but efficient review. Also with our proofs, our PBUs, we call them proofs of beneficial use, clarifying that process and simplifying it so we have a more simplified route to permit certification. Staffing, recruitment, and retention. When we're fully staffed, we're about 115 people. Right now, our current vacancies stand at approximately 15. I think I said the same thing when we were in Winnemucca. It's about the same number. We filled some positions, but some of those are lateral fills. People go from one end of the division to another. But right now, we're looking at filling one more deputy administrator position. We have an offer that's pending right now. A senior hydrologist position that our director had kind of broadly mentioned. That's a hard one to fill, senior hydrogeologist position. That's been advertised for a while, and we're hoping we find some interest in that. We recently lost a human resources specialist, and then we have approximately 12 other staff level positions throughout the division that we're looking to fill. So recruitment's a big thing for us, but once you recruit them, you have to retain them. And so, just looking at ways to improve retention or maintain retention, and that's everything through training, valuing the people we have, giving them the tools they need, and compensating them for the work that they do. Serving Nevada citizens, again, through efficiency, communication, and transparency. I talked about some prioritization. One of the things we're looking at doing in water rights is our process called Ready for Action, the RFA process. It's getting the permits to a point where they've been initially reviewed. We take them to the next level. We look at anything they might need, and we get back to the public after that on here's what we need to push this thing, to push these applications forward. We recognize, like anybody else, there's always room for improvement, and this is an area we found where if we can beef this up a little bit, I think we can generate those kinds of efficiencies, reduce backlog, things like that. Also balancing workloads to better expedite our reviews, and as I said, training, and then setting some expectations for staff. What we found here over this last year or so with folks leaving, retiring, or whatnot, about a year or so ago, we had a current average experience level that was about 8 to 10 years within the division. Now we're down to an average experience level of about 2 years. So it takes about a year or so to get up to speed on the basics for folks. And so you can imagine just by getting these people trained and up to speed, we're going to see some efficiencies there alone. We've got really bright people doing good things, and it's coming along real well, but it takes a little time. And then as far as the communication piece, I've always, throughout my career, trying to, when you do have issues, trying to address the small issues before they become big issues. And that's internally and externally. And in doing that, I try to involve myself in meetings, hearings, getting everybody involved in phone calls, and just corresponding with folks. Hey, what's the issue? How can we, or here's our issue. How can we get this moving for you? And then, as I mentioned before, this permit data tracker that we're excited about and eventually ready to release it. Just as I kind of start wrapping this up, some of the volume of work, as you might know, we have 14 hydrographic regions and 256 groundwater basins. We receive approximately 1,100 water right applications per year and about 4,000 extensions of time requests per year. And so, that's a tall order for our folks. Some of the modern shifts in water management, we went from treating groundwater and surface water separately, and that was kind of a ruling 5079 back in 2001. Now in 2024, the Supreme Court said, and I don't think it's any surprise these days, but let's look at these together. There's usually some connection between them. So we're transitioning to a conjunctive management approach. Some of our successes, we've increased the number of certificates that's come across my desk. They've tripled, I'd say, in the last month from what I saw the first month I was here. Our backlog and extensions of time reduced from taking 136 days to about 78 days since January. We've streamlined some hydrologic assessments. We've got involved in this Nevada Water Initiative, which is a statewide program that modernizes groundwater assessments using best available science. It's created, it's kind of looked at a way to update our foundational water estimates, the old perennial yield estimates, which are really good, but they're old now. We want to look at those and make sure they're current. We've had partnerships with us, Desert Research Institute, and the USGS. And then just some other quick ones. Our Las Vegas office is now fully staffed, which we're happy about. Our title section's fully staffed, and dam safety is almost fully staffed. We're looking at one administrative position. So we've done a lot of good work. And it's not just me, but I'm here to present it. But I've had a lot of help with the people we have, and I'm proud of who we have and what we're doing. And I hope that the public sees that we're trying to make some changes in the interest of all of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you again for coming in today. I know you guys are very busy, especially in being able to cut that backlog about in half, it sounds like. So that's that takes time. So thank you so much for making time to come in and speak with us. I do have a few questions. We're actually going to start in Vegas. Senator Pazina.
Thank you so much, Chair, for allowing me to ask a question. And thank you so much for the presentation today. Congratulations to you both on your new positions. My question's a little more, I think, for the state engineer. First, I'd like to say, I'm thrilled to hear that you're focused on the Nevada Water Initiative. That's one of the priorities of the Southern Nevada Forum. And I think water conservation is really one of the priorities of everyone in this state, and the legislature's done a lot of work on this. So I'm thrilled to hear that it's going to be an initiative that you're very focused on. I think my question really is, especially with the 2024 Supreme Court ruling in regards to conjunctive water management, I appreciate that you plan to be transparent because I think that's so important, but it feels like every year. Now, I will say we had a couple drops of rain in Las Vegas today, which sadly is the first we've had in probably over 100 days, and that's just a few drops. Drought is something we're really struggling with here, and looking at conjunctive water management and how we're able to make sure that this is a priority, that we have water into the future for all of our stakeholders. How comfortable do you feel when it comes to potential curtailment or options that may need to be utilized in the future when looking around the state?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That is a concern. Really, the last thing we want to do is curtail anybody. We are working hard through conjunctive management to not have to do that. As folks know, we have very limited tools, and we would say that's really our only tool is to curtail. But I think there's sometimes a misnomer on what that looks like and when we have to get there. And my goal is to not get us there, but rather to work cooperatively through conjunctive management, looking at community-based approaches. The folks in those various communities, the water there is near and dear to their heart. They know it better than anybody. They know what's available, what they need. And so working with them and working with the stakeholders to understand that, and even you get parties that may not disagree, trying to bring them together to come up with solutions through offsets and whatnot to maybe find ways, maybe we can use a little less, spread it out a little more. There's no one fix for any of it, but I'm not comfortable curtailing everybody. To me, it's like if you're running a business or whatever and you have to fire somebody. I would never sleep well the night before. Sometimes it has to happen, but you don't want to get there. You want to find solutions before you get there. And so that's what conjunctive management does for us. Like you, we have not seen a lot of rain here. It's quite honestly a little dismal. It's a little scary for folks, and we understand that. But we want to work together to not have to get to a position of curtailment.
Thank you so much for attempting to answer a very difficult question. But don't forget also to say your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. That was in my head and I drift. This is Joe Casiopo, State Engineer for the Division of Water Resources. My apologies.
Quite all right. And then, Senator, did you have any follow-up questions?
Not at this time. Thank you so much. It's a really challenging question, and I know that it's a lot of work with a lot of stakeholders around the state and looking at a lot of science-based approaches to see what we can do to conserve water and not have to reach curtailment, which I think no one in this state wants. So I appreciate your answer, and I look forward to getting to work with you as we approach the coming session.
Thank you, Senator, for truly a great question. Next, we have 4 questions from Assemblymember DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Most of them are for the director, though I do have one for the state engineer. First off, thank you very much for the presentation. It's actually been great working with you guys since you've joined the division and the department. Director, it was appreciated that you talked about trying to increase the amount of stakeholder and regulated community engagement within the department. How has that concept been received at the various divisions and bureaus?
Vincent Guthrow, for the record, Director at Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I think it's welcome from our administrators. I think, again, it's a larger department, and I think it's going to take time, frankly. But I think one of the things that I've tried to share with the administrators and then get that down to the sort of rank and file employee level is that I think increased communication with the regulated community actually makes your job easier. I know I said it a little bit in my presentation, but I'll sort of drive that home. And I think, if you have a simple response I'll give you an example. I think if you have a simple response for a member of the regulated community who just has a simple question. And look, I understand sometimes we're navigating legal guardrails, so we'll obviously follow those. But I think, if you can pick up the phone and just answer them or call them, proactively, call that individual proactively, I think that saves you a ton of time having to draft an email or hide behind some other mechanism of communication. I just think simple, soft skills like that could go a long way. I don't want to be held to this statistic, but I think some of our challenges in government as a whole is they're customer service based. They're not, the lack of a desire to do the right thing, or that folks aren't interested in doing the right thing. I think some of it's just sort of, for lack of a better phrase, it's customer service based. So I hope to improve that.
I appreciate that answer. And yes, the people skills are sometimes very much an overlooked job requirement, particularly with technical-based employees, which leads me to my next question. Engineers, geologists, biologists, even archaeologists sometimes aren't the best communicators, but we need those type of employees within the department and the various divisions. What are the key issues that you're having with regards to retaining or hiring in those types of positions?
For the record, Vincent Guthrow, Director of DCNR. So I can't speak across all of the divisions given the time that I've been there, but first I will say one thing about employees. One is, I always try to lead with sort of an employee first mentality. And what that means is I try to retain the employees we have. I know a lot of our focus has been on recruitment of empty positions or vacant positions, but a lot of what I really focus on is retaining our current staff. But then as we move into that recruitment, I think to answer your question more directly, look, the state is never going to be able to compete with the private sector when it comes to compensation. And these roles are they're sought after in the private sector also, right? And so, but what I would say is that the individuals that then choose to work at the state are passionate, committed people, and we just need to find a way to harness that. As far as individual, that might be a division by division question. So I wouldn't want to just pontificate on that. But I think a lot of it has to do with challenges around compensation, and again, if you have some vacancies and people feel overworked too, that can be a challenge. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to manage that, and we give people the support that they need and ask for, and that we proactively see across the divisions.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
One more question for you, and that is, you had mentioned the Tahoe Plate Fund and the use of those funds in the basin. Who actually implements the spending of those funds?
That's a very good question, Vincent Guthrow, for the record. We have it's done through our EIP program, and usually, I believe we administer those at the state. I'll have to get back to you on it, because I think some of that it goes across agencies, but I'll check in with you and get you the answer on that, because some of that might have been granted out as well. So I don't want to overspeak. So I'll get you the info.
And I realize that quite a bit of it may actually go through TRPA. I'm just wondering who in the state actually makes the decision on where it goes.
I'll let you know.
Okay,
I'll follow up if that's okay, and I'll follow up with the committee.
All right, and then
And actually, if you could send that to everybody in the committee, that'd be great. And I know it's a pain, but every time you answer, you do have to say your name. Thank you.
And Chair, thank you for accommodating my question. So I have one question for the state engineer. And we talked about this previously in other discussions, but the permit tracking program, from a timing perspective, when do you see that being fully implemented internally? And then what's your expectation on when it would be up and available to the public?
Thank you. For the record, Joe Cassiopo, Division of Water Resources State Engineer. So internally, the program is almost up and running. So I would say we're debugging it right now. It's gone to staff. We're looking at it, but I'd say probably in the next few months, it's going to be up and running internally. That could change a little bit depending on what we find with it, what tweaks we need to make. And we really want to make sure it's in good shape so it's useful for the public. So I don't want to drag it out, and I don't have a good answer for you yet, but I would, if I had to guess, it's probably a year away before it really goes out to the public. If we can do it sooner, we will, but again, it could be less time, it could be a little more time.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you very much for the answers and the presentation today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Next up, Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first one's the real quick ones, Vince, on the hemp permitting and processing. Does that go through your division, or where does that go?
Vincent Guthrow, Director of DCNR for the record. Hemp, I'm sorry, did you say, I just want to clarify that I have it, the hemp.
Yeah.
It would depend on if it's
popping up. I don't know where that goes.
Vincent Guthrow for the record. It would depend on if the facility needed additional permits across our divisions, but we don't specifically regulate that.
Okay, thank
my
you.
understanding, yeah.
And then I've got a short one for the state engineer, and we got a permitting issue that's in Elko County, which is a Spring Creek area, and these Spring Creek holds the water permits right now, but the process going through it, they go through like 4 or 5 different engineers that got to approve these, which the water permits is already existing. That's creating a big problem and a major holdup. So I'd like to see if I can get some of the people that are involved with it in some of the meetings. Assemblyman Gurr and I both at some of the meetings, but we'd like to get with you and see what we can do to try to get this process moving, because this is ridiculous. Having 5 different engineers in 5 different districts all trying to make a decision. It's something that's existing.
Thank you. Joe Cassiopo, Division of Water Resources State Engineer for the record. I appreciate that comment. These are things we're looking into. And I don't want to make excuses as to why that is, but I'd be more than happy to meet with you, meet with staff, and see what we can do to figure out what's going on and try to expedite that. And like I mentioned before, if it's an issue of communication and there's some items that we have to get resolved, I'd like to try to get those resolved as efficiently as we can. So very happy to set up that kind of meeting and figure out where we're at.
Yeah, thank you very much, because it's people's got houses, they're paying on houses, and they still don't have the water rights yet. And the water rights are there by the division of Spring Creek Association. So it's really holding this thing back. And these people not being able to move in their houses that are being totally built, and that's the holdup because it's going through all these processes. But I appreciate that, and I'll get that set up as soon as I can. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I also have a few questions. My first question actually has to do with Director Guthrie. First of all, Bob McGill, huge loss for us. So I just want to put that out there about how much I've enjoyed working with him over the last few years. So the individual coming in, have they been part of our family, I guess, or the department for a long time? Or will there also be a little bit of time to be able to do some of that training and comfort level?
Thank you, Chair. Vincent Guthrow, Director of DCNR for the record. I appreciate that question. He actually served as a deputy administrator. I think you'll be impressed with him as well. He'll do a great job for us, and I think you'll be impressed with his work style as well. And we'll get a meet and greet together for you all. But yeah, he served as a deputy administrator. He has also worked his way up through serving in several different state parks, and so he's ready to take the reins. So, and he's already in the position as of now. So,
thank you so much, because I figured as much, but wanted to make sure about that. And then the second question, when you were talking about the successes, you talked about this shared stewardship program, and then it was $100 million for 3.5 million acres of protection. Did I write down those numbers wrong, or was that 100% coming from the federal government, or was that also some matching funds from the state?
For the record, Vincent Guthrow, Director at DCNR, Chair. So it's about, so the foundation so the collaboration secured $100 million over since the program's inception, is my understanding. We can get you the exact figures on what it was this year, maybe break it down by year. Happy to share that with the committee. And then it helped us this year. Sorry if that was unclear on my end. To do that restoration work on the Sierra front and Elko fronts. And we'll be happy to clear that up with some data for you, and we'll share that with the rest of the committee if that works.
That would be wonderful, because those were some impressive numbers. I was like, geez,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
They did the shared stewardship has been very beneficial to the state, and really happy with the work that's been done in that area.
Absolutely. And then the last question has to do with you should not be surprised by this at all, the outdoor education and grant programs. There are 22. It sounds like, are those across the state, or are those mostly in 1 or 2 counties?
For the record, Vincent Guthrow, Director of DCNR. So the information that I have is that we did 22 projects, and so those are statewide. And yeah, the goal is to do that statewide. I think there's obviously a priority to leverage some of those dollars for sort of urban school-age children to get out to to recreate. I think there's a great story I have where in my prior role, we did some outdoor recreation work, and there's a school-age child from North Las Vegas who said it was the first time they'd seen the stars. So the program does some great work, and it's just statewide. Yeah.
Thank you. And my last question has to do with the employment, and this would be for both individuals. When people are leaving the department or the office, in particular for the water, are they going into private industries after we have trained them as a state and invested in them for a long period of time? Or are they mostly retiring? Are we facing a silver tsunami, in other words, which I know we are facing in many areas of public employment? Or is it more that they've already got the knowledge, the state has done a large amount of training for them, and then they're able to get paid 2, 3, 4 times more in the private industry?
For the record, Vincent Guthrow, Director at DCNR. Chair, I'll let the state engineer maybe answer some of the more detailed questions. My guess is it's a mix of retirements and leveraging the skill sets that they learned, hopefully by doing great work for the state. And then, I mean, part of the training component is that they're doing work. I mean, I'll make this pitch since we're in a meeting. The state's a great way to build a career. It's you get to work with a lot of diverse stakeholders on a lot of diverse issues, and I think even within individual divisions. So I'm making a plug for state employment if you're listening. But I'll let the state engineer sort of if he has some answers on specifics. But my guess is, and this is across divisions and programs, it's a mix.
Thank you. Joe Cassiopo, Division of Water Resources, State Engineer. That's the correct answer. It's a mix. I can tell you most recently, we've had a few folks leave for retirement purposes. It was time to move on. We've also had some that relocated for personal reasons. Several of our folks work in the Reno area, so driving to Carson every day gets a little expensive for them, not just in terms of money, but in terms of time. And so trying to find something closer to home is what they were looking for. And then, of course, there's that factor of compensation that some people are looking for on the private side. But I try to tell people internally, yes, you can make more money on the private side in general, but you really got to look at what's rewarding for you and what the benefits are. I ran a firm with 2 other people, and I can't even tell you how much money I can tell you, but I won't, how much money we spend per month in healthcare and whatnot to try to offset the cost for employees. So what the state tries to do, I think, is very good. And I think we have a pretty good program for folks, and it's just educating them on both sides of that coin and what we can do for them at the state. But I think to keep people, just valuing them, letting them know that we're supporting them and providing a work environment that they enjoy and they feel like they're contributing to. But it is a combination of things as to why you lose people.
Thank you. And then my last question for both of you, and recognizing that you're brand new, and so unsure if you've got this. Is there an exit interview when people decide to leave the departments?
For the record, Vincent Guthrow, Director at DCNR. So we do try to do those. I know it depends. Some of them don't reach my level always. I think it depends on the level of employee that's departing. I certainly want to. Usually, when a member of leadership, we've had a couple that were in leadership positions in their divisions. That those we did sort of a final exit interview. But my understanding is those do happen. I don't know if it's a formalized process through HR. Again, given some of my newness to this, there probably is some HR processes. I would hope that would take place if folks were open to that, but I don't know if it's required.
Joe Cassiopo, Division of Water Resources, State Engineer. That is done at our division. We do it. And again, I've been there a short amount of time, so I can't say it happens all the time. But in some of the recent folks that have left, we have had a chance to sit down, talk to them. As you know, with the state, there are forms you go through and all that. So there is a formal process that we go through to try to understand why people might be departing.
Thank you so much. I'll put it out there one more time for any questions. Thank you for giving us so much time, and also I know I've called both of you and you've got back to me right away, so really appreciate the open door policy that you've had, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our presentation on Nevada's conservation districts. Next up on the agenda, we will hear from Mr. Kevin Piper, who is presenting here in Carson City, and then Mr. Jake Tibbetts, who is on Zoom. Thank you for, I just like saying Zoom that way, I don't know why. Thank you for joining us, and you may begin whenever you are ready.
All right. I had some slides.
Oh, I think your microphone's not on yet. There you go.
I had some slides prepared.
Let's see, it'll be just a
presentation,
moment.
So in case, that's what I'll be referring to as we move along.
See if we can get those up on the computer for you. So it'll be just a second.
Okay.
Do you have somebody that can help you press the little button thing?
Oh, they're on the laptop. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, we'll get going now. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Piper.
Again, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Piper. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Conservation Districts, which is a nonprofit here in Nevada. Again, attending remotely is Jake Tibbetts. Among his many roles, he also serves on our NVACD board. Today, I'll provide a brief overview of Nevada's 28 conservation districts, who we are, what we do, and how we partner with the state federal agencies to deliver conservation on the ground across Nevada. Nevada has 28 conservation districts established under NRS 548. Each district is a local political subdivision governed by a volunteer board of supervisors. Our work is voluntary, community-driven, and non-regulatory. Conservation districts serve as the bridge between landowners, local communities, and state and federal partners, ensuring conservation programs are practical, effective, and locally supported. Why conservation districts matter. Conservation districts operate in every region of Nevada, from agricultural valleys to rangelands to growing urban areas. We address real-world natural resource challenges, drought, wildfire recovery, watershed health, invasive species, and more. Because we are locally led, we can respond quickly to community needs and help agencies implement conservation programs in ways that work on the ground. How CDs operate. Each district is governed by 6 or sometimes 7 supervisors, 5 elected, 1 appointed to represent the county, and 1 appointed to represent incorporated cities where applicable. District priorities are set locally based on community input and resource needs. We work closely with agricultural producers, private landowners, tribal governments, counties, municipalities, and state and federal agencies. Our work spans rangeland health, watershed restoration, fuels reduction, wildlife habitat, soil health, and conservation education. Leveraging state dollars. State funding is the foundation that allows districts to bring in much larger investments. With modest state support, CDs routinely secure NRCS cooperative agreements, Farm Bill program funding, BLM and Forest Service partnerships, county contributions, and private grants. Leveraging of state funding by CDs is often evaluated in low, medium, and high values. These values are a direct reflection of each CD's level of staffing. Although state appropriations to CDs are modest, districts consistently leverage these funds many times over to secure match dollars. NRS 548.1052 includes a legislative declaration recognizing the importance of locally led efforts for the conservation of renewable natural resources. The legislature will strive to provide appropriations to conservation districts at a level comparable to the appropriations provided to similar districts in other western states. However, Nevada falls behind what CDs in other western states receive from legislative appropriations. Current annual state funding each CD receives in 2026, this year, will be $5,500. The State Conservation Commission's 2010 to 2015 strategic plan cited National Association of Conservation Agencies' review of state appropriations for conservation. That review at the time listed Nevada CD's national ranking among all 50 states and 2 territories, Guam and Pacific Islands, at 52nd. A 2022 nationwide survey of conservation districts conducted by the National Association of State Conservation Agencies obtained responses from 25 conservation districts. Unfortunately, Nevada was not listed. Of the 25 states that responded, the average amount of state appropriations was $15.5 million, with a median of $3.5 million. Examples of CD-led projects. Here are some of the examples of the work districts lead: post-fire restoration and reseeding, rangeland monitoring, irrigation efficiency improvements, riparian restoration, invasive weed control, community wildfire protection, soil health demonstration projects, and youth conservation education. These projects are tailored to local needs and delivered by people who live and work in the communities they serve. Partnerships with the USDA and NRCS. Our partnership with the Natural Resource Conservation Service is central to how conservation gets done in Nevada. CDs convene local working groups that help set NRCS priorities. We assist producers with outreach and conservation planning. Through cooperative agreements, NVACD and districts provide technical assistance that NRCS relies on, especially in rural areas where staffing is limited. This partnership ensures Nevada producers can fully access Farm Bill conservation programs. Current challenges. Declarations in NRS 548 are as applicable today as ever. NRS 548.100, the consequences of failing to plan for and accomplish the conservation and controlled development of the renewable resources of the state of Nevada are to handicap economic development and cause degeneration of environmental conditions important to future generations. NRS 548.110, it is hereby declared to be the policy of the legislature to recognize the ever-increasing demands on the renewable natural resources of the state and the need to conserve, protect, and develop such resources at such levels of quality as will meet the needs of the people of the state. Despite increasing demand on conservation assistance, state funding for CDs has remained flat. Many districts operate with extremely limited staffing capacity, in some cases entirely volunteer run. Nevada's large landscapes and remote geographies require more on-the-ground support than districts currently have. At the same time, wildfire recovery needs continue to grow and communities are asking for more help with drought resilience, soil health, and watershed restoration. To meet statewide conservation needs, we respectfully request consideration of increased base funding for all 28 districts. We also request support for a statewide soil health program. Predictable and stable funding is essential for districts to hire part-time and full-time staff and to match federal and private grants. Additionally, NVACD would also request consideration of staffing for the Nevada Conservation Districts program to include a dedicated staff person for urban agriculture and a fiscal staff person to assist with grants for conservation districts. Regarding the soil health program, we would like to look at an opportunity to revisit Assembly Bill 80 from the 2025 legislative session or develop a new statewide soil health initiative that would develop incentives and funding to improve water retention, drought resilience, and soil productivity, support producers with technical assistance and demonstration projects, leverage NRCS programs such as the Conservation Stewardship Program and the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, be delivered locally through CDs, ensuring producer and trust and participation, align Nevada with national soil health priorities. We assert that lack of a formal soil health program in Nevada translates to missing out on federal and other funding to support producers to implement soil health practices. Currently, 7 Western states have created soil health legislation signed into law: Washington State, Oregon, California, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. In closing, the Nevada Association of Conservation Districts respectfully requests consideration of increased funding for Nevada's 28 districts, support for a statewide soil health program, and consideration of staffing for the Nevada Conservation Districts program. Thank you for your consideration. We welcome questions and look forward to continued partnership. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I know sometimes it's a little bit nerve-wracking to present to us. Let me double check. We do have some questions. I will start off with Assemblymember DeLong.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One is on the makeup of the governing bodies for each of the CDs. You'd said there were 5 that are elected. How are those, and who elects those members?
I'll jump in, Jake, and you can edit my response if needed.
And please don't forget to say.
I'm sorry.
It's quite
Kevin
all right.
Piper, Executive Director for NVACD. Each conservation district, those supervisors that sit on those boards are elected locally, and they can either be done through the local election process. So this coming year, we have an election coming up. So in their county, they can go that way if they want to, or they can hold a special meeting that goes through public notice and public open meeting law procedures, and they can hold that in those fashions. And Jake, if you want to add anything to that, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Jake Tibbetts for the record. Yeah, Kevin's correct. Those are locally led elections, but it's the county clerks that determine the process that they want to follow. So folks can go on the ballot if the county clerk determines that that's the right way that they would like that to happen in that individual district. If not, they can have a mass meeting of electors that the clerk also runs or oversees, where, you know, people still have to be registered voters and whatever to be able to come to those mass meetings and vote. So we have some districts that put them on the ballots and some that do the mass meetings, but it's all at the direction of the county clerks.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. And then my second question has to do with the comparing of the funding of each of the CDs relative to those in other states. Who does the benchmarking of that?
Kevin Piper, Executive Director for NVACD. So the National Association of Conservation Districts, which is our umbrella, if you will, for all over 3,000 conservation districts nationwide, they will interact with each state's association to see how each state is acquiring state funding and appropriations. It's also done through NASCA as well. So there's a comparable. So with NASCA, you have actually our conservation district program could have an opportunity to be reporting to them versus our National Association of Conservation Districts, which is acquiring information through an association like ours.
Just a quick follow-up on that one. So in your slide presentation, you said that each district gets approximately $5,500 per budget cycle from the legislature. What are the values in the districts in the surrounding states on an average? What do they get from their state legislators?
Kevin Piper, Executive Director for NVACD. I'm going to basically tell you that I don't have all those numbers. I can tell you it's a variable across the board, depending on how each, if you will, state runs their conservation district programs. Some acquire it through a mill tax, which is, you know, maybe a few and far between. Others are direct appropriations, and then they're divvied up either through possible incentive programs based on the work the conservation districts are doing. The other format like we have here in the state is that the conservation districts have to go through a process that's administered by the State Conservation Commission and the CD programs to show good standing. And that requires that they have so many meetings that they've handed in their plans and their budgets, and they've checked off the boxes to receive that funding.
So dive into that a little bit more. So you had said that the state is 52nd in a list of 52 legislative or state bodies and territories in the U.S. So are we half of the other states as far as funding amounts, or are we 1/10, or are we close to 80%? I'm just trying to benchmark that a little bit so that when we go into the legislative session, we've got on the record what that funding gap looks like. And is it something we can deal with?
Yes. Kevin Piper, Nevada Association of Conservation Districts. What I can try and share with you, because again, trying to get numbers across the state or across the country and comparable numbers can be rather tough to do. The most recent numbers, I guess, from comparison, and that's the 2022 NASCA information that I reported on. You know, the range, I'll just give you some numbers here. That out of the 25 states conservation districts that reported information, the lowest was Michigan at $117,000, okay, a year. Now, Nevada this year sits at about $154,000 based on that 28 districts and $5,500 if they're all found in good standing. Then, if you want to go to the top, Virginia allocates $123 million to conservation district programs in the state of Virginia. Okay. If you want to kind of go down and find, and that's why I tried to give you an average and a median, but the median out of those, 25 is 3.5 million being provided. You have some states, Arizona, 389,000, Idaho, 5.2 million. I could go on, but the state of Washington, 11.2 million.
Yeah, that helps relative to the state of Nevada, which is 150,000. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And could
Madam
you
Chair.
possibly, Jake, before I call upon you, Jake, could you possibly provide that information for us to our secretary, so that way we could possibly, if necessary, continue to do some more discussions? That'd be perfect. Jake Tibbetts, I think you also wanted to say something.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Again, Jake Tibbetts for the record. I just want to clarify a bit too, that the state appropriates more money to support CDs than just the what we call like the capacity funding they all receive, the $5,500 per conservation district. So the state does, through DCNR, you just received a presentation from them. The CD program is housed within DCNR. There's a full-time staff member that helps the districts. And so, she receives funding for her salary, benefits, and everything from the state. So that is also included. And then there's also a $75,000 grant that's a competitive pool of funds that only conservation districts can go after to put sage grouse habitat projects on the ground. So there is more than just that $5,500 per conservation district. Also, when we're comparing against other states, some states, they have a different pool. They have this, again, like keep the lights on kind of funding, the capacity funding, and the funding that conservation districts can use to leverage against applying for more funding. But some states also have directed funding. So the legislature appropriates, $4 million for a specific project or something like that. So it can vary widely across different budget years in states based on those types of things. But overall, Nevada consistently ranks right down towards the bottom as far as funding for conservation districts. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for the clarification. Next up, Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to figure out, have you got any kind of total budget, what you guys are trying to get? This is not a finance committee, but what it is can make recommendations, but it still comes down to dollars and cents that have to go to the right budget area.
Kevin Piper, Nevada Association of Conservation Districts. What I will say is that since I believe 2009, again, Jake can correct me, but since about 2009, there's been some incremental increases. In 2009, it was, I would have to double check, but I know it dropped below 5,500. I think at some point it was down around $4,000 a year. At previous times in prior history, it's actually been up to $10,000. So I mean, we'd have to, could go back through some of the records that the CD program has with DCNR. I mean, to be honest with you, I'd love to see districts get back up to at least, $10,000 a year if it's possible, because like I mentioned before, we have 28 districts, and when you start to do comparisons of districts, you can't really look at the range without looking at where the districts are located, how much funds they're able to bring in, do they have staffing, and I'll tell you that the districts that are on the high end have full-time staff, and they're usually in an area where there's a tremendous amount of funding opportunities. And I'll give you an example. If you want to look at our conservation districts, out in Elko who have done very well in some cases, and some operate on very little, $5,000 to $10,000 a year because they don't have any staffing. And then we go to Tahoe, and the Nevada Tahoe CD is bringing in millions of dollars. So it's kind of apples and oranges. And so sometimes we like to, meet in the middle and say it would be nice to look at the value of what staffing does to these conservation districts, whether it's part-time or full-time. I can tell you from my past experience as a conservation district manager that I worked for the Dayton Valley Conservation District. It was the 28th district added to the list in, I think, 1999. And being located here close to Carson City and the resources that were available to us to tap into for watershed restoration projects on the Carson River, just different pots of money that become available depending on what your CD's resource priorities are. So you kind of have to look at those resource priorities across the state and see what funds are available, whether they're state, federal, or private funding. But it comes down to having a person help champion that stuff for your conservation district, because your board is made up of volunteers, and they want to have their monthly meetings or their quarterly meetings, and they want to help run it, and they want to help do things in their community, but they don't have time to chase grants and permits and anything else that go into putting a project together, or they don't have that time. So anyway, that's.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And that's something I think that you'd probably have to put on the next agenda or whenever to take a look at this, because I think it does got some serious problems that might have to be addressed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, I do have a few questions. The first question has to do with when you were mentioning on how the CDs operate, and that you work with agriculture producers, private landowners, and tribal governments. Is there any sort of work with, does that mean that there has to be a member of the tribal government, or is it just that you get a chance to talk with them, or is it, again, each CD operates in a different way?
Kevin Piper, Nevada Association of Conservation Districts. And I'll let Jake weigh in on this, but I will mention that it depends on where a conservation district is located and how much interaction they have with the tribal governments. We do have, one conservation district, Duck Valley, that operates on tribal ground. And so, we do have that representation, but I'll let Jake weigh in a little bit more on that topic.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Jake Tibbetts for the record. So yes, Kevin's correct. We actually have one tribal conservation district in the state, the Duck Valley tribe. So of those 28, that's one of them. And then many districts do work really closely with the tribes. So my home district, the Eureka Conservation District, we worked and partnered with the Duck Valley tribe on quite a few projects, even though it's not in Eureka County. A lot of those folks do their, business and a lot of social things in Eureka. Many of their kids are educated in the Eureka County school system, and we've gone across boundaries there. That if you look at NRS 548, it does talk about being able to go outside of your boundaries and working with partner districts and things. So there are many good examples we could get you if you want more details about the type of work that conservation districts are doing with some of our tribes across the state, and we could pull some of that together for you.
Yes, please, because you mentioned the Tahoe area. I know that the tribal council is a little bit more in the California, but also they still have a small area of the Minden, Douglas area as well. So any sort of information about that, I think, would be really great to hear. This second question I had, you might have already touched upon a little bit, especially with mentioning the NRS statute. what happens are there conservation districts which go across county line? Because we all know that there are many water districts that do that. Is the same thing happening? And if so, with the comment that you made about the county clerks making those decisions, do those county clerks then have to work with each other? I'm kind of confused with what happens when it goes across county lines and, again, also kind of a state lines when you think about the Tahoe area.
Kevin, I'll jump in. So again, Jake Tibbetts for the record. So yes, the statute clarifies, we do have districts that cover, go across county lines, not many, but that does happen. We don't have any that, go across into a different state, but like Nevada Tahoe Conservation District would be a good example of working within the basin with neighboring states. And California also has, I think they call them resource conservation districts in California. So all our neighboring states also have conservation districts so when there's those interstate issues or common boundaries, we can work together. But yes, the statute does clarify how clerks work together because it's the clerks basically determine how they'd want to run that election. So that is all something that we've been able to work through and have a pretty good process to do that.
And what NRS statute was that again? I didn't write it down.
Jake Tibbetts for the record. It's NRS 548 is the statute related to conservation districts, and it includes the State Conservation Commission.
You have it in your presentation. I just was looking on the wrong slide. So thank you so much for that clarification. And then the last question actually is, besides the funding needs, which is very clearly present, and then some of the other current challenges, how are you getting people involved? I mean, is that also a challenge? Are you seeing people wanting to be part of this, or does it feel like it's all the same people wanting to do this? In other words, are we having newer generations that are willing to be part of these items? On the house tab.
Kevin Piper, NVACD. I'll weigh in, and I'm sure Jake's got some info too if he needs to. But I would say it's a kind of a cross segment of things, because depending on some of our more rural CDs, you'll see a lot of the same folks involved. We are seeing some new faces in recruitment, but I would say that's one of the things that we are working more on now. If you, I can give you another example where I've seen a whole board over several years change over to some of the younger ag producers getting involved. And I think some of that is related to seeing the benefits that can be obtained by being a part of a conservation district. And it opens a lot of doors and, potential projects that people can actually partner on to get some things done out on the ground. And one of the things the association is doing this year is we're actually moving towards having what we call area meetings rather than having an annual all-state meeting. So like in July, we'll be out in Eureka having a meeting where it's open to all 28 districts, but we're going to be focusing on some of the projects. Eureka CD is hosting that. And so a lot of the conservation districts in that area will be coming to that meeting, and we'll be holding an afternoon field tour and be on the ground looking at projects and how they came about start to finish, funding-wise, partners, permits, everything that kind of goes into getting something done on the ground. And then we have some supervisor training the following morning to go through some things like fundraising and holding local working groups and things like that.
Thank you so much. Any more further questions? Seeing none, thank you for presenting the information to us today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake, as well. So next up, we will move on to our presentation We'll be discussing some strategies for addressing risk to groundwater dependent ecosystems. We'll have Dr. Laurel Saito from, I hope I said that right, from the Nature Conservancy joining us. And thank you for being here today. Please introduce yourself for the record, and you may begin whenever you are ready.
All right, hopefully you guys are seeing my slides. So thank you so much for inviting me here to talk to you. My name is Laurel Saito. I'm the Nevada Water Strategy Director for our Nevada chapter of the Nature Conservancy, and I'm going to talk to you about some of our some things about water in Nevada, specifically groundwater, which I think is kind of the hidden hero for us here in Nevada. We don't have very much surface water, so groundwater is what helps our scarce water resources go much farther to sustain our economies, people, and wildlife. First, I want to share a little bit about the Nature Conservancy in case you don't know about our organization. We're an international organization that was founded in 1951 by a small group of scientists to take direct action to save threatened natural areas. Our mission is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends, and we work towards a vision where the diversity of life thrives and people act to conserve nature for its own sake and its ability to fulfill our needs and enrich our lives. I'm going to start off with a few definitions of what I'll be talking about today. And the first one you probably know, which is groundwater, which is water under the land surface. And here in the arid western United States, the water you're often closest to is the groundwater beneath your feet rather than a lake or a stream. And then I'm going to talk about groundwater dependent ecosystems. And these are, I might call them GDEs. And they're ecosystems that rely on groundwater for all or part of their structure and function. And so springs are always groundwater dependent, whereas there are differing degrees of groundwater dependence for wetlands, phreatophyte communities, lakes, and rivers. Since we are such a dry state, most of our lakes and any rivers that flow year-round are probably groundwater dependent. And then I already used this term, I already used this term that you may not have heard before, this term phreatophytes. These are plants or trees with roots that can tap into groundwater. And if in this figure here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, guess not. So the greasewood plant there illustrated has roots that are in the groundwater, but as it's bringing that groundwater into its roots, it can also lift water into the soil, which enables other plants to be there. And so a lot of times with these phreatophytes, you do not see any water on the land surface, but the presence of these plants indicates that there's shallow groundwater present. In 2019, the Nature Conservancy mapped likely groundwater-dependent ecosystems in Nevada, and we found that at that time, we have over 25,000 springs, documented springs in Nevada. And when we looked at the land surface, over 10% of the land in Nevada, which is over 8 million acres, was covered with likely groundwater-dependent ecosystems like phreatophytes, wetlands, and lakes. And black greasewood, shown in the photo here, are the GDE vegetation of greatest extent in Nevada. And then if we assume that all rivers and streams that flow year-round are connected to groundwater, then we estimated that we have over 11,500 miles of GDE rivers and streams. But then we looked at 12 stressors and threats to groundwater-dependent ecosystems in 2022, and one of the things we found was that over 1/3 of the thousands of wells that we analyzed had significantly declining groundwater level trends over the last several decades. And so this means that water levels are dropping and can get out of the reach of domestic wells for people as well as for nature. And also, all of Nevada is projected to have longer and more intense droughts in the future, which will compound upon other stressors and threats. So continuing the status quo is not going to reverse these trends, so we need to make our groundwater-dependent ecosystems and groundwater more resilient. So to address the 12 stressors and threats, we developed strategies by doing a literature review and having many discussions with organizations and entities about our stressor and threat assessment. And our staff also reviewed our strategies and considered how they were linked to the stressors and threats and what challenges might exist for implementing actions associated with the strategies. The 10 strategies we developed are available at the QR code, and also I included a copy of the report in your packet today. And we drafted each strategy to include rationale for why we need the strategy, as well as examples of actions associated with the strategy and considerations and challenges for implementing the strategy. We had 4 categories of strategies. Science and monitoring strategies are needed because knowledge and data can reduce uncertainty, increasing the likelihood that other strategies can be successful. And then our management strategies can bolster informed decision-making and on-the-ground action to conserve GDEs. And education and outreach strategies increase awareness and communication that can foster collaboration to implement successful strategies. Now, I'm not going to talk about these strategies in the interest of time, but more details are available at the QR code. I am going to focus on the 4th category of strategies, which are the policy strategies, since those are the most related to what we're going to be talking about today. And these policy strategies can refine governance structures that support groundwater and GDE management. So we already know that we have groundwater overuse by looking at declining groundwater level trends. So we urgently need policies and tools to change this trend by incentivizing the reduction of groundwater use in places where it's being overused. So that is our first policy strategy. This map from the Division of Water Resources indicates that about 20% of Nevada's 256 groundwater basins are pumped beyond the perennial yield. And our stressor and threat assessment found that at least 40% of all 5 types of groundwater-dependent ecosystems are at risk of overpumping. Some example actions associated with the strategy include policies that incentivize the protection of GDEs and policies to reduce groundwater overuse, and limits or allocations could be set on groundwater consumption in some places. An action to address this policy strategy that was passed by the legislature in 2025 was voluntary groundwater rights retirement, and I thank all of you for helping us to pass that legislation. The purpose of the program is to protect the natural resources of the state, address declining levels of groundwater, or address conflicts with existing rights or with protectable interests in existing domestic wells. Groundwater rights retired through the program are permanently retired, and the program has a 10-year time frame, so it's going to expire in 2035. Although the program and an account for funds was established, no funding was provided for the program, so that's something we're still working on, which you're going to hear about later today from other presenters. I've also included a handout about groundwater rights retirement in your packet, which I thought I had a copy of here, but anyway, it's out there on the table. And it's also available at the link on the slide. Now, we know there is interest in groundwater rights retirement because a pilot program using $25 million of American Rescue Plan Act funds in 2024 retired over 20,000 acre feet of groundwater rights, and there was more demand than funds available. So we also need to protect against future groundwater withdrawals where it's not sustainable. This really requires us to be thinking about the long term as we consider new economic development and how much water it's going to require and where that water will come from. If we're not careful about this, we can run out of water and then have failing economies. In Nevada water law, there are a few protections for water for wildlife or ecosystems. For example, water for wildlife can be a beneficial use, and interbasin transfers of water must be environmentally sound. Our stressor and threat assessment found that over 70% of wetlands, rivers, lakes, and phreatophytes are at risk of potential groundwater overuse because they are in basins that are overappropriated or where groundwater is shallow. Some example actions to prevent future withdrawals include land conservation actions like conservation easements or incorporating considerations for GDEs and groundwater use in Nevada water law. An example of an action that was taken by the Nevada Legislature to address this strategy was legislation passed in 2019 to reserve 10% of groundwater from being appropriated in groundwater basins that were not already over-appropriated. And this was to keep these basins from becoming over-appropriated and to provide a buffer for droughts and climate. So this resulted in setting aside almost 20,000 acre-feet of groundwater from ever being appropriated. And then we need to provide thoughtful regulations and laws to help guide decision makers and project developers to good sustainable decisions to ensure we'll have the benefits we enjoy and hope that future Nevadans will enjoy from groundwater and groundwater-dependent ecosystems. So that is our third policy strategy. We're seeing pressure for economic development through things like energy infrastructure, mining, and data centers that will require water, while projections are that Nevada will have more frequent and intense droughts in the future. Coordination of land, energy, and water use is critical for healthy communities, ecosystems, and future generations of Nevadans. Some example actions include smart siting for new developments that have minimal or no impacts to GDEs and species that depend on them. And we can also include protections for vulnerable GDE species in codes, regulations, or other policies. An example of an action related to Policy 3 is Senate Bill 150 that was passed in 2019 that required cities or counties to develop water resource plans every 10 years so that they can know what water resources are available and what might be needed in the future. The Desert Research Institute is helping some rural communities, rural counties develop effective water resource plans, with Esmeralda County being the first county to complete a new plan with DRI's assistance. Our strategy report is available at the Nature Conservancy's Groundwater Resource Hub, and this website has items from across the Nature Conservancy about groundwater, including educational materials, reports, papers, and tools. So please contact us if you have any questions, and I have included a QR code here for a story map about GDEs in Nevada if you want to learn more about groundwater-dependent ecosystems. And then a paper we published about stressors, threats, and strategies for GDEs in Nevada is available at the paper link on the slide. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. And two items. First of all, the English teacher and me loved the fact that you made, let me see if I can find it. What word was it that I was like, I did? Droughty. I love the fact that you used the word droughty as opposed to just drought increasing. So I'll start using the word droughty a little bit more. So thank you so much for including that one. And then second, thank you for all the background information too and allowing for those QR codes to be part of it. Really appreciate it. All right, so looking around, seeing if there are any questions. Don't see anybody in Las Vegas or, nope. Senator Ellison, did you have a question? You want to double check something?
Thank you, ma'am. I'm just going over the two maps, the policies on one, adopted policies, and then the next page over is policy strategy 3, and I'm trying to figure out the drought on the orange versus the yellow. And the yellow says 0.21 to 0.40. Is that capable of sustaining wildlife and ranching, or is that getting to a critical situation?
Thank you, Senator Ellison. Laurel Saito, Water Strategy Director for the Nature Conservancy, for the record. Thanks for asking about that map, because I really didn't explain it very well at all, actually. This is our stressor and threat rating for all the different all the 256 hydrographic areas in Nevada, which we did as part of our stressor and threat report. So for that report, we rated all of our stressors and threats on a scale of 0, which is lowest risk, to 1, which is highest risk. So actually all of Nevada is at risk for more intense droughts and frequent droughts in the future. But on the scale of lowest risk, the yellow ones are the lowest risk, the darker ones are the highest risk, but they're all at risk. It's just Southern Nevada and Western Nevada are at especially high risk, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much. And I'll be able to break these down by county when I get to a bigger map. Thank you.
Yeah, it is by the hydrographic areas. So yeah, so that it's not by county, but you can figure it out for your counties.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I have no questions, but I do want to make a comment. Thank you always for being available for questions. I know that I have called you way too many times at 10:30 at night, like, explain what's happening with this exactly. And you're always able to make it very user-friendly. So thank you so much for the information and for the presentation today. All right. Next up, and I believe you're a part of this group as well, we're going to go on to the next item on our agenda, agenda item 6, a presentation on water law concepts discussed by a Nevada water law stakeholder group for potential inclusion in recommended bill draft request. Before you come to the table, although before you get started, I just wanted to make a very quick thank you to everyone. Oh, come on up to the table as this is happening. I just wanted to make a quick thank you for everyone that's participating in this water discussion group. I know that there have been some times when there's been disagreements and agreements, and also sometimes well, I don't know questions, and the fact that you guys are able to have candid, open conversations to try to figure out some laws that are best for all of Nevada. Really, I wanted to express my thank you to everyone that's listed on the bill presentation idea that you presented, the letter, but then also just how much energy and emotion you all have put into it. Really appreciate it, and you may begin whenever you're ready.
Chair Anderson, Vice Chair Cruz Crawford, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jeff Fontaine, and I'm here this morning on behalf of the Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group. We've called ourselves different things at different times, but I think that's probably the best title that I've heard so far. Thank you for the opportunity to present the group's concepts for an omnibus water bill for potential inclusion in a recommended bill draft request, and thank you so much for acknowledging the members of the group. I feel the same way as being a member and participating in this process. The Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group is really an informal network of water stakeholders representing a diverse group of interests, including environmental, agricultural, municipal, mining, and rural interests who have met regularly to discuss potential legislation for 2027. And input was also received from the Nevada Division of Water Resources. And as you noticed, many of the members are here today. This collaborative effort really began in earnest in the 2023-2024 interim. And of course, it led to the recommendation of a bill draft request for an omnibus bill revising various provisions of Nevada water law, including, has been mentioned, for the Voluntary Water Rights Retirement Program. And we as a group also appreciate the support of the previous interim committee and support and leadership in getting AB 104 passed unanimously. During this interim, the group examined a wide range of water-related topics and worked towards a consensus approach for moving these issues forward. And as a result, the group has prepared an omnibus bill for the committee's consideration for the 2027 session. The bill the draft bill was outlined in a letter sent to the committee on June 10th, and we're still working on specific details, and those will be provided by the July 1st deadline. Today, I'm going to address the concepts described in that letter, starting with state lands registrar fees. This is a concept to clarify fees assessed to a regional government agency by the state lands registrar, under NRS 322-100 as it relates to certain real estate in Southern Nevada and water transmission projects. So under NRS 232, the state land registrar may charge a fee for the use of state lands in such an amount as the state land registrar determines to be reasonable based upon fair market value of the use. This would add a section addressing the fees charged by the state land registrar. However, we understand that there is an administrative solution being developed to address the issue this section was intended to resolve. If that solution is implemented, then this provision may not be needed in the bill's final form. So for that reason, I'm not going to spend any additional time on this item during this today's presentation. If there are questions, there are representatives that can of the group that can answer in more detail than I. Next is number 2, match requirements for the grant program for capital improvements to publicly owned water system. This concept is to clarify the required funding match on awards made through this program, which is authorized under NRS 349-983 for the Voluntary Water Rights Retirement Program. The proposed language would clearly define the match requirements for all grant recipients. Just a little history, the Nevada's grant program for capital improvements to publicly owned water systems was created during the 1991 legislative session through AB 198. And the program helps small communities finance water system infrastructure and capital projects needed to meet enforceable federal Safe Drinking Water Act standards. It's governed by the State Board for Financing Water Projects and administered by the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. And the program is designed to close the gap between the cost of these projects and what a community can reasonably afford. These are, in some cases, very expensive capital improvement projects. However, the communities are expected to contribute as much as they can before requesting state assistance, and that match requirement is based on the median household income of the recipient's customers with adjustments for demonstrated economic hardship, certainly taking into account imminent risk to public health and any other relevant factors identified by the board. Since the program's enactment, eligibility has been expanded to include water conservation projects, which are not required to have a match, and this includes improving irrigation efficiencies, and the two projects that were added in AB 104 and SB 36 from last session, specifically removing grass and replacing the grass with water-efficient landscaping and permanently retiring groundwater rights. So this concept would define the match requirements for all of the grant recipients. Next is number 3, groundwater rights retirement funding. The concept is to direct the State Board of Finance to increase the amount of the general obligation bonds for the grants program from $125 million to $200 million. And this would include possible earmarks for voluntary water rights retirement. So sustainable funding for the water rights retirement program was, I think, a central focus of the group's discussions, and the demand for those grants from the Capital Improvement to Publicly Owned Water Systems Program continues to exceed the resources currently available, particularly for those projects that do help small communities address public health and safety concerns and meet the critical regulatory compliance requirements. So increasing the bond cap from $125 million to $200 million would provide additional funding opportunities for water rights retirement. This is strictly an authorization request representing what I think the group believes is the next significant step toward advancing Nevada's voluntary water rights retirement program. I would also add that the group is discussing as well how to permanently retire donated permitted water rights, and that is not an option that is currently covered by the voluntary water rights retirement program. Moving on to number 4, agricultural use assessments for irrigation groundwater rights retirement. This concept is to amend NRS 361A 030 to allow agricultural land where voluntary water rights retirement has occurred to continue receiving an agricultural use assessment and related deferred property taxes. The land, however, must remain in agriculture or open space to continue to receive the deferment. Under current law, if agricultural land did not qualify for an agricultural assessment in prior fiscal years, a county assessor may retroactively assess the deferred property taxes and impose a 20% penalty on the accumulated deferred tax for each year. So this is really a 5-year look back, and the group is working on recommended language to address this particular provision. Moving on to number 5, vested water rights filing deadline. This is a follow-up from or on SB 31 from the 2025 session. The group has had, I think, a robust discussion and continues to do so, and is still contemplating language to address both the filing deadline for vested rights under NRS 533-087 and the submission of federal claims. Next is monitoring, management, and mitigation plans, also known as 3M plans, and the concept here is to amend NRS 533-353 to change the notification process for county participation in the development of a 3M plan for both change applications as well as new appropriations. So under NRS 533-353, if the state engineer requires a 3M plan as a condition of appropriating water for beneficial use, the state engineer must allow the county in which the point of diversion has been approved to participate in an advisory capacity. And if the county requests participation, they are allowed to do so. Before approving the 3M plan, the state engineer must consider any comments, analysis, or other information submitted by the participating county. However, the state engineer is not required to incorporate any input from the county in the final 3M plan. So this concept is to clarify that the state engineer can also require a plan for an application to change the point of diversion, place of use, or manner of use of an existing water right, and that's more commonly known as a change application. The concept would also change the county notification process for developing the 3M plan, and rather than requiring a county to request participation, the state engineer would notify the county when a 3M plan is required and allow the county to participate in an advisory capacity as it currently does. The group is also continuing discussions on whether additional language is needed to clarify when a 3M plan will be subject to judicial review. This is something that the group has been discussing and will hopefully make a decision here in the next several days whether or not to move forward with that particular language. Moving on to number 7, you may have heard this concept before. It's about groundwater boards, and this concept provides for the establishment of county groundwater boards for the purpose of providing recommendations for local action to bring groundwater basins into balance. It also provides for the imposition of fees at the county's discretion to help offset the cost of any actions undertaken, as well as possible use of the fees for groundwater rights retirement and for mitigating conflicts with surface water. So the concept of enabling Nevada's counties to create groundwater boards I think has evolved over the past 3 legislative sessions, but has never been approved. So we know that other states have established local groundwater boards with varying levels of authority and responsibility, and in Nevada, similar discussions are occurring in areas such as the Humboldt River Basin, where local stakeholders are considering actions to address overpumped groundwater basins and conflicts between groundwater and surface water users. I think it's fair to say that there's consensus that locally driven solutions developed in coordination with the Nevada Division of Water Resources offer, I think, a viable strategy for addressing local water resource challenges, and the group is continuing to work on refining the details of how these boards or possibly districts would be created and what authorities they would have. And the last item on the list is basin assessments. This concept amends NRS 534040 to clarify the use of basin assessment fees, increase the increases in fees, and reporting of the use of fees. Under NRS 534040, the state engineer is authorized to levy a special assessment on water right holders in the basin that the state engineer has designated as needing special supervision. The state engineer has the authority to determine the basins in which the assessments are levied and how much is levied. Counties then must approve and collect the special assessments. The concept would establish a cap on groundwater assessments, ensure that the assessments are used exclusively for expenses incurred in the administration, operation, and maintenance of the basin from which the money is collected, and also to improve transparency on how the assessments are determined and utilized. And this particular concept would apply only to basins where the use of water is for purposes other than municipal purposes. We are working with the state engineer and the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to build on the language developed last session and hopefully get to a point where we can include that in our recommendation as well. This concludes my presentation, again on behalf of the Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your consideration of these concepts for a potential inclusion in a recommended bill draft request. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure any of the members of the group are also available to provide additional details as needed.
Well, and again, I just thank you. First of all, thank you for going through it so quickly, because I believe, based upon conversations with a few members of the working group, you guys have been meeting about once a week or every other week for about the last 3 months. So really appreciate, again, the very passionate disagreements and agreements that have happened, but then also the ability to come to consensus on these things. Before I open it up to the rest of the committee, I know that one of the things when initially we started talking about some of these items, one of the items was important was that there would not be a fiscal item. And there's a few that could possibly create fiscal questions. is the working group, either you or any other member of the working group, do you believe that there will be fiscal notes anticipated, and or do you believe that they will not be? And if not, can you kind of explain why?
Thank you. For the record, Chair Anderson, and again, for the record, representing Jeff Fontaine, representing the Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group. I have to get used to the name of that group. Thank you for the question. Yes, that was a top consideration. I think when we first assembled, I think it was in early January, to talk about all of this. We had two, I guess, guidelines, if you will. One is we want to all have consensus on these issues, and two, we don't want to create a fiscal note to the extent that that's possible. That said, I would say probably the one that stands out as a possibility for a fiscal note, and quite frankly is probably would probably trigger a fiscal note, is the increase in the bond cap. As I pointed out, and as you all know, it's an authorization request only. However, I'm guessing that maybe because it does create a potential liability for the state, that it may require a fiscal note. So that's maybe a little bit different than what we commonly work with in terms of fiscal notes, particularly from the Nevada Division of Water Resources. And so I think we've been very thoughtful about that fiscal note that could be generated as a result of any of these recommendations on behalf or on the division. As I mentioned, the division has been involved in these meetings, and I can't speak for them, but that's sort of what we're hoping will happen here.
Again, I know that this is not the fiscal committee, so we're just going over the ideas of it. But if I'm understanding what you're saying, is this is giving authorization, not allocation. Is that what I'm understanding you saying?
Again, for the record, Jeff Fontaine, that is correct.
Great. And then was there any anticipation of number 4 as well, of that possibility? Unsure what the specific language will be, which I think is on all of this. Right now, this is the idea items, but just wanted to see if number 4 was kind of in that same realm of the assessments being more, you may, not, let's get you some money.
Again, for the record, Jeff Fontaine, representing the Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group. First of all, if there were a fiscal note, it would be, well, I'll back up and say that there would be no negative impact as a result of this, is probably the best way I could explain it, because they're currently getting the tax exemption, so there's no loss of tax revenue in this situation.
Thank you so much. Now I'll open it up for the rest of the committee. I know you're going to be surprised by this. I believe Assemblymember DeLong might have a question. Assemblymember DeLong.
I thank you, Chair. Jeff, thank you very much for the presentation. All 8 topics, I think, are important ones that need to be addressed. As the Chair said, without seeing specific language, it's hard to come up with specific questions. So I guess the one thing I do see here, and I'd like your thoughts on, is on item number 8, I could easily see the state engineer, given my history on getting fiscal notes from the state engineer, of them putting one on that item, because you'd be requiring them to do more accounting. They'd say more administrative staff. So I could easily see them putting a fiscal note on that one. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Again, for the record, Jeff Fontaine, representing the Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group, and thank you for the question, Assemblymember DeLong. So we'll continue to have these discussions, but really the only change here, well, I guess there are 2 changes. One is enabling the state engineer, if you will, to require a 3M plan for a change application, which, oh, I'm sorry.
Item
talking
number
about
8,
basin assessment.
basin
Excuse
assessment.
me. I'm sorry. I'm off on the wrong. There we go. Oh, okay. So we have been meeting with the state engineer and department, and compared to, I'll just say this, compared to the previous three bills on this particular topic, there is much less and really not a lot left as far as engagement by the state engineer and the Division of Water Resources. And like you said, without seeing the exact language, you wouldn't know that. And in the past, there were fiscal notes, and I agree that there would be a fiscal note. What we try to do is not just minimize it, but pretty much have it not create any fiscal note. And so again, that would hopefully be something that answers your question when you see specific language or the recommendation come forward.
I appreciate that answer. Yeah, I look forward to seeing the specific language, but thanks a lot. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Great question. Assemblymember Gurr.
Thank you, Chair. Along the same lines as Assembly Member DeLong's question, standing up groundwater boards, is that not going to create a fiscal note someplace too? And how do you propose to stand up groundwater boards?
For the record,
or is that further language?
Yeah, for the record, Jeff Fontana, representing Nevada Water Law Stakeholder Group. Thank you for that question as well. And this is also, again, top of line when we have conversations about the specific language. In this case, the fiscal note, well, first of all, it's enabling, so it's up to each individual county to decide if that's something they want to do. There's no requirement on the county to do so. If they do, then yes, there could be a fiscal note or a cost to the county. And again, when you see the specific language, hopefully you'll see the specific language if it's something we end up wanting to include in the bill, draft request, recommendation. Hopefully that will answer your question. But the idea, again, is it's enabling for the counties, and if the counties want to do it, there's a mechanism for them to help support that as well through some fee increases and things of that nature, fees and things of that nature.
Thank you, Chair. That was all.
Thank you. Any further questions? Again, seeing none, but I again want to say how much I appreciate every member of this working group. I'm trying to figure out a different thing to call you guys. I'm not going to lie. Maybe I'll start calling you guys like the platypus group. I don't know, because kind of have elements from all sorts of different areas. But look forward to seeing the language that is actually proposed, and then also the ongoing discussions. And I do think it would be, it's appropriate to bring in a senator's name that was part of this discussion before the time frame it started, and that would be Senator Gokachia. I know he's not part of the group, but his influence with the water rights retirement from 2 sessions ago was definitely bringing people together to have that discussion and to show that water really is not about a party issue. It's about being able to discuss things. I didn't know if you wanted to make any closing remarks or not.
No, again, thank you to the interim committee, and we look forward to getting our recommendation to you by July 1st.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to that discussion on June 30th. Going to be interesting, won't it? All right, so our final presentation. We are joined via Zoom by Mr. Tom Klein and Ms. Nicole Isa. I hope I said your name correctly. From NCSL to brief us on a landmark Supreme Court ruling, Sackett versus EPA. AVH, are you ready? And whenever you are ready, you may begin.
Just 1 second to get my screen shared. Hoping everyone can see that.
We can. And again, thank you so much for bringing up, for presenting to us about some of the Supreme Court cases that could have an impact on our environmental issues.
Of course. So, hi everyone. My name is Nicole Eza. I'm Legislative Director on NCSL's State Federal Relations team. So my portfolio covers law and public safety, which includes Supreme Court tracking on cases with large state impacts. I'm joined today by my colleague, Tom Klein, who is a policy associate on our state policy research team. And his issue portfolio covers water, wildlife, agriculture, and natural disasters. So we've been asked by the committee to brief on the Supreme Court decision on Sackett versus EPA and relevant legislation and regulations brought by other states related to this case, or the concept of waters of the United States in general. So I'll begin with a brief background and information about the case, and then my colleague Tom will discuss related state actions, and then we can take any questions that you guys might have. So some quick background. The case arises from the EPA's interpretation of the Clean Water Act. And this was one of the country's first federal environmental laws, and it is still the primary law governing water pollution across the country. Though it was originally passed in 1948, the 1972 amendments to the law established the federal jurisdiction over navigable waters, defined in the text as waters of the United States. And since then, it has been half a century of back and forth trying to nail down a definition for the concept of waters of the United States. So, and I apologize if there's any noise in the background. I'm in our beautiful capital city of DC and people love to honk, so apologies. The definition of waters of the United States is very significant because some Clean Water Act programs only apply to WOTUS, or waters of the United States. And the list of them is on the screen. The program's regulations that hinge on the definition of waters of the US have huge state impacts, from constraining construction, affecting industries, protecting drinking water, and preventing environmental catastrophes with downstream effects on individuals, businesses, and the property rights for both. So how does Sackett versus the EPA tie into the discussion of waters of the United States? So the case revolves around the question of whether wetlands are considered waters of the United States, and if so, what test determines this? So the factual background of the case is that the Sackett family began construction on a tract of land that they owned that was part of a wetland area, but were forced to stop construction by an EPA administrative compliance order that determined their home construction violated the Clean Water Act as it was occurring on wetlands that qualified as regulated navigable waters or waters of the United States. So prior Supreme Court precedent in Rapanos versus the United States held that the Clean Water Act does not regulate all wetlands, but the court in the prior case could not agree on a test for determining whether a wetland is part of waters of the US. So the court in Sackett aimed to settle this confusion by setting a test for wetland inclusion for Clean Water Act purposes. So the court determined in its opinion for Sackett that the Clean Water Act only extends to wetlands that have a continuous surface connection with waters of the United States, meaning a relatively permanent body of water connected to a traditional interstate navigable water. So what does that mean practically? Imagine a wetland that abuts a river. The wetland would be considered waters of the United States because it is, it has continuous surface connection by abutting that navigable water. So if the definition seems as clear as coal, that is in line with the history of the concept of waters of the United States. So this is an abridged timeline of the definitions and determinations on wetlands given by either statute, regulations by federal agencies, or Supreme Court rulings. And it is certain that more changes and or clarifications will come in the future. So you can see it. The original text says waters of the United States, including the territorial seas. Then in Rapanos, they said that adjacency to other jurisdictional waters was not the standard for determining waters of the United States. Then in 2015, the Clean Water Rule promulgated by EPA gave 8 categories of jurisdictional waters, and that it includes the traditional navigable waters, interstate waters, territorial seas, tributaries, adjacent waters, waters with a significant nexus to other jurisdictional waters or within a floodplain, and then a list of like kind of specific additional waters. So after that, we have the Sackett decision saying that wetlands are waters of the United States if continuous surface connection with relatively permanent body of water connected to traditional interstate navigable waters. Then in 2023, we have a new WOTUS rule that certain wetlands are jurisdictional based on their adjacency to other covered waters, defining adjacency as bordering, contiguous, or neighboring. And then in last year, the EPA promulgated a new rule or proposed a new rule with a new definition stating that WOTUS were relatively permanent standing or continuously flowing bodies of water, such as streams, oceans, rivers, and lakes, and wetlands that are connected and indistinguishable from such water bodies. So while a lot of these seem really similar, the like nuances between the definitions will pull in or exclude a lot of different types of waters in the United States. So it's very important in context of this discussion, and that is why there's been so much back and forth on the true definition of WOTUS, because the Clean Water Act didn't give a specific definition. So what's the current status quo? It's definitely certain there's going to be changes and more clarifications in the future, because there's ongoing litigation on WOTUS rules that are splitting the states into 2 groups. So one group, which Nevada is a part of, that is one group is subject to the 2023 WOTUS rule, and then the other group of states is subject to the pre-2015 regulations that are more in line with the Sackett decision. It remains to be seen how these cases will pan out and whether another SCOTUS case on the topic comes, but in the interim time, states can act on their own to protect the waters, to protect their waters in ways that make sense to them. So I'll turn things over to Tom to discuss what states have been up to.
Tom Klein, Policy Associate with NCSL. So what states are doing? It can be a little bit difficult to determine everything that's going on, as most legislation is not directly addressing the Sackett decision or is a specific wetland piece of legislation directly related to WOTUS. But these examples are certainly directly related. So this slide really shows that states are taking 2 different approaches after the Supreme Court's decision. And some states, the states on the left here, some states are backfilling reduced federal Clean Water Act protections by creating their own state permitting programs. And the states on the right, for example, here in North Carolina and Tennessee, are narrowing state regulations to more closely follow the new federal WOTUS standard. So we'll just briefly talk about some of these bills. So Colorado is the clearest backfill example. It directly addresses the Sackett decision in its language. House Bill 24-1379 created a state dredge and fill permitting program for state waters, including wetlands, so the state can continue reviewing impacts even when the federal jurisdiction may no longer apply. And New Mexico took a similar approach with Senate Bill 21 last year. Many waters in New Mexico are ephemeral. They're not flowing year round. They don't have a groundwater source. So that's what's stated in the bill language. New Mexico moved towards a state-led surface water permitting framework rather than relying only on the federal Clean Water Act coverage. And then with the other approaches here with North Carolina and Tennessee, North Carolina went the other direction through Senate Bill 582, the 2023 Farm Act. The state tied wetland regulation more closely to the new federal WOTUS definition, meaning state protections are narrowed when federal jurisdiction is narrowed. So it's very closely following the federal regulations. And Tennessee, similar to North Carolina, House Bill 541 created categories for isolated wetlands and reduced and removed permitting and mitigation requirements for certain artificial or low quality, small or moderate quality wetlands. And truly the main takeaway is that that post-Sackett decision really created two policy choices: either rebuild the state level protections or align more closely with the new federal standard. And then I just wanted to share some resources NCSL has produced. We have a report on wetlands that was updated in 2024 to better reflect the Sackett decision and speaks to some of the other things states have been doing on wetland policy. And then we also have a public-facing environment and natural resource legislation database that tracks issues like water conservation, water quality, and can be filtered by state and keyword like wetland. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today, and we're happy to take some questions.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation and for those other resources. Looking around the room. Senator, did you have any questions? I don't. A very quick question that I might have has to do with the way that the Colorado and New Mexico both, because it appears that they are both dealing with the same items that we are when it comes to which rule is being utilized versus the other two. Was that part of the consideration as to why those bills passed? And I'll understand if you're not able to answer that question based upon the fact that you are actually just providing information for us at this time. But do we know if it's because of the fact that both Colorado and New Mexico are under the 2023 WOTUS rule, while the other two are under the Sackett definition?
Really can't speak to the context as to which these bills passed, but they do take a similar framework in creating their own permitting structure in the language stated to help conserve wetlands in the state following this new federal guideline. The states are close in geography and both have ephemeral streams that are not sourced by groundwater sources, which was in the consideration as well. But I apologize if I did not fully answer your question here.
No need for apology, because the way I asked it also was not exactly nice and neat and clear. So, but thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for giving us the time today to participate in our meeting. Greatly appreciate the work that you do and look forward to future conversations.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I believe our final item on the agenda, we've arrived at the last item of the agenda, which is our second period of public comment. Again, to call in, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted, please enter meeting ID 829-3742-4742 and then press the pound key. And if prompted for a participation ID, please press pound again. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name before you begin. Each individual will have 2 minutes, and we'll start again here in Carson City. If anybody would like to make public comments, please come to the table. How about in Las Vegas? Is there anyone at the room that would like to provide public comment? Seeing one person, come on up. You got this. You may begin whenever you are ready, and thank you so much for sitting with us all day today. Greatly appreciate your participation.
My name is Eric, and I'm a fifth grader. I joined the Youth Lead, a non-profit founded by my older brother, teacher Ms. Joseph. Yet the young lead teaches students grade 6 to 12 leadership skills to be active and practice politics and future leaders in the government. I'm happy to be invited here today. by the Assemblyman Jackson because the environment and clean water are important to me. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this meeting today to learn more about items that impact our environment.
Thank you so much for participating. And just a reminder as well, we do have in almost all of our libraries, there are state park passes. And so if you wanted to check one of those out, that's another way to be involved. But thank you so much for participating. And if there's another speaker who would like to go, you may begin when you are ready.
I'm going to speak on behalf of Avery. He's going to sign. You ready? Sure. He's deaf and hard of hearing. Ready? My name is Avery. Thank you for letting me join your meeting today. As a deaf and hard of hearing student, the group has allowed me to participate in my community. Thank you to Assemblyman Jackson for inviting me here today. In the future, I hope to participate in politics and create rules that help other students with disabilities. Sorry, y'all, he's super nervous. Thank you.
Thank you. And then, first of all, thank you for interpreting for us. Can we also have your name as the interpreter?
I'm Miss Joseph. These are my students with Youth Lead, the group he was talking about. So I'm their advisor, and these are the students that participate. During the school year, we usually service about 25 students.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much for participating. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who would like to testify? Seeing none, AVH, do we have anyone on the phone who wishes to make public comment?
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. So that concludes our meeting for today. Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, August 12th, not October, August. We will potentially hear 2 presentations that were planned for today that the timeframes did not work out. But this will be our final meeting again on August 12th. And thank you for everyone that has worked with us, whether it has been simply attending or helping us staff or being a participant. Greatly appreciate it. And one last reminder, please submit any bill draft request recommendations by July 1st. And hearing nobody else, this meeting has adjourned, and I hope everyone has a nice day since we are getting out a little bit earlier than usual. Thank you so much.